corner. Hyman without a stick. Ready to start on the pass to Quad. Block. Leafs get it again. Matthews to center. Into the net. He scores! Holy Mackinaw. They're going to the playoffs.
Created by Die-Hard Leafs fans for Die-Hard Leafs fans. This is the Holy Mackinaw podcast with Clayton Terrio, Danny Horton, and Bret Wills.
Welcome to the Holy Mackinaw podcast. I am your host, Clayton Terrio, here again with Danny Horton and Bret Wills. How's it going, guys?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Not bad, not bad.
Hanging in there, Clay. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. I wouldn't say over the sadness of our first round exit, but I'm doing better than I was last week, that's for sure. And it's been interesting to reflect on it, and I'm over the reactionary comments of trading this player, that player. I'm not really like that anyway, but it seems a lot of fans are still pretty pissed off at Marner and Matthews, but they're young. They got a long future ahead of them. But so 2 days after the exit, there was the press conferences, and obviously, as usual, is professional rhetoric, but I always feel obligated to watch it just to see kind of how the players are feeling. And the one that really stuck out to me was Shanahan. He took the first 5 minutes of his presser to say sorry to the fans, and we wanted to do better for Ontario because we've been hit pretty much the hardest by COVID in Ontario. And I felt he really owned up to the loss. And even though he's not a player, he seems very confident in this group. They're all really young, and I think they'll learn eventually personally. Dubas is too. I liked Dubas. Dubas was very, very honorable, very, not overly defensive of the players, but at least he was confident in their abilities. But Danny, we'll start with you. What did you think of the pressers? Was there anything that stood out to you?
All right, I'll start with Shanny's, and I kind of echo most of your sentiments there, Clay, where he was very professional. He owned it. That's what you expect from Brendan Shanahan. It's not his first rodeo. He's been in Toronto for several years now. He knows the market, plus from his former playing days. He knows what it's about, and he knows the passion, and he knows that they disappointed. He's pissed off too. I'm sure they had aspirations of making a very deep run, and they're pissed off. So I love that he owned everything, and he was quite frank and honest about it. My takeaways, I guess, from Shanny's his comments, was mostly about killer instinct. I was really curious to hear from a former player, and especially a former player of that caliber of Brendan Shanahan, Hockey Hall of Fame player. He spoke about it, and he said that he believes that it's something that can be learned. I was kind of taken back by that, but who am I to second guess Brendan Shanahan? I'm kind of the mindset, or I was of the belief, that you either have killer instinct or you don't. You either have it or you don't, built in you. These guys seem to wilt under pressure for some reason. I sure hope Shanny's right, and I have no reason to doubt him. I fully believe in the management team. I think they know what they're doing. It's challenging. He also spoke about the flat cap, and he alluded to challenges there. Obviously, when they signed their core four, we'll call them, they believed that the cap was going up, and that would help them, and that's why they were projecting and maybe overpaid at the time, especially on Mitch Marner's part. But nobody could have predicted a global pandemic. Nobody saw that coming. So it's kind of just what they have to deal with. So yeah, I thought Brendan Shanahan answered everything very well. He was very honest, and I guess no real surprises. I liked hearing the comments about, killer instinct, and I liked how he spoke frank about it and said whether, this group can learn it internally or we go externally. I thought that was kind of interesting, but obviously no tip of a cap. He backed the core four as well, said that he loves these players, and any team in the league would love to have any one of these players. They have four. They're very fortunate to have those players. Maybe kind of protecting them, voicing his, giving them sort of the, the protection there, the halo over them. But let's see what happens, come the off season and coming up to the draft. I think if the right deal presents itself, anybody's available. As for Kyle Dubas, no real takeaways for me for Dubas. Like he did his job again. To me, much like Shanny's. They owned it and they talked about it. And yeah, he has to support his guys. He goes to bat for these guys, and I actually thought Kyle did a masterful job this year. The way him and Brandon Pridham managed the cap and the depth that they had and accrued in the lineup, I thought was fantastic. It's just unfortunate it didn't work out for whatever reason, and they're going to be motivated to go back to the drawing board and hopefully rectify this, because if any team and any fan base deserves, a turnaround here, it's us, boys. And, I guess we just have to believe it's coming.
Yeah, I think so. And it is hard to really touch on it. Like I said, they're not going to really give anything away. They're not going to give secrets away, and they're not going to shit on their team. Like they built it. They're not going to be, defeatist about it. They're professionals. What about you, Bret? What did you think about the press conferences? Was there anything that stood out to you?
Not really. I mean, Danny's touched on an awful lot. I want to praise Brandon Pridham ahead of Kyle Dubas, not because I don't like Kyle Dubas. I love Kyle Dubas. But, I mean, the Capologists did it again. And, I mean, obviously, they fell short. It seems like it's a recurring theme, and we keep saying it. They fell short year after year. But without a guy like that, you have no chance anyway. With this thought about killer instinct, and I hate that I'm disagreeing with Danny. I think that it's something that I watch a lot of hockey. I watch hockey from 16-year-olds all the way up, and I think it's something that in a lot of circumstances, I feel that it is learned. This idea where you draft we'll take a Tom Wilson, and I don't want to talk about Tom Wilson because I think some of the stuff he does is scum of the universe level. But we'll take a guy like Tom Wilson that was drafted 11th overall, and he was highly touted as a guy that could put the puck in the net. And he gets to Washington, and they take him aside and they say, "You make this team by grinding it out," and that's fair. But he had to learn to grind it out. I understand that he did that in the OHL. He was highly touted coming out of his OHL junior draft years. But again, you learn that. It's something that you don't have right away. You have to learn how to properly hit. You have to learn how to properly grind, how to properly box a guy out. You learn all these skills, and you learn what killer instinct is. You understand the concept, but it's something that doesn't come to you naturally. They say, I think it's bullshit that people say you either have it or you don't. No. You learn it. You learn what killer instinct is. And when you're a professional hockey player or a professional athlete, you have to have that killer instinct, or you have to learn about that killer instinct, or your job is not there next year.
Yeah, that's true. And I think too, like the hitting aspect, especially, like you go from the OHL where you're playing with people who are still developing as a man, let alone as a hockey player. And I think you do have to learn to hit at this level, especially like, I don't know, it's hard. I don't know. I'd say some people are born with it innately as an athlete, but most people have to learn it. I'd say it's a very rare quality to just kind of develop into as a young person. I think you have to learn at the NHL level to do it, but we'll see. I mean, like you said, Danny and you, Bret, like Shanny and Pridham and Dubas, they seem to know what they're doing. I can't doubt a guy who's won 3 Stanley Cups. Like I just can't. Like Brendan Shanahan's won gold medals in Stanley Cups. He knows what it's about. But yeah, I mean, Danny, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Killer Instinct. Like it's not that I necessarily don't agree somewhat with what Bret said as well, and what you're saying too, Clay. I do believe it can be learned, and especially when a guy like Brendan Shanahan, to me, it speaks volumes. I just feel like in me as like a competitor, and by no means do I play at any level that these guys do, but just a competitor in the sports that I play, like say in golf. I want to beat you. Like I don't I'm not there. Like I prefer the pressure situations. I play better. To me, I focus it. And Clay, you and I are huge Tiger Woods fans. We grew up watching just the master of he's the mental mind master. He is the epitome of killer instinct in an athlete. He will stomp on your throat when he has the chance, especially in his prime. Um, that's who I idled myself after. I loved as an athlete. That's why I love Tiger Woods. His skill set is one thing, but his mental abilities are unbelievable, and that's what makes him even far superior than everyone else in his generation. So it's not that I don't believe it can be learned, but if you listen to Brendan Shanahan's comments, he did say that we have to learn it internally, and he touched on externally. And the reason I believe that he mentioned externally is because sometimes to learn that, I think in order to learn that internally, you have to have external help come in that have done it before and that know how to do it, to show those guys. And I think in my mind, what that means is, during pressure situations, we saw this team. Let's look at game 5, back to game 5 and game 6. Game 7 was a little bit different. Montreal just played better in game 7. Leafs were, holding back a little bit, but I think it was a defensive chess match. Let's go back to game 5 and game 6. In game 5 and game 6, the Leafs did not start on time. They just did not start on time. They admitted to such, right? They came out slow. They came out tentative. They sat back in the hockey game and they let Montreal dictate the pace. They let Montreal score the first goal, first couple goals, 3 in the one game, 3 in game 5, 2 in game 6. And then they started to come back and play their game. There was a difference when they were down because then there's no pressure. You have to be able to thrive under pressure situations. That to me is what killer instinct is. When the game's played at its hardest and it has the most pressure on, you need to rise to the occasion and you need to channel that inner anxiety, because everyone gets nervous, right? We're all human beings. We all get nervous. We've all, regardless of the level of sport that we've played at, we've all felt that pressure, that inner anxiety. But the best in the game, regardless of the sport, know how to channel it and make it positive energy and use it as focus and a drive to beat you. Right. And I looked at, I'll give you the example again. And I know I keep mentioning it, but every time I watch them, I just shake my head. Look at Boston. It is unbelievable to me. I was watching that game last night. Yes, they lost 5-4. It was a tough game, but holy shit, they're down 5-2 in the third period. Most teams would just, wilt away. The game's over. Not those boys. Their big boys came out to play. They turned it on. They turned it up. They scored some goals to get them back in the game, and they made a game of it. They fell short. That's all you can ask for. Like that's what you ask for of your big boys. They need to show up regardless of the team, regardless of the sport, or else you're not going to have a chance. But yeah, not to beat a dead horse. I do understand how killer instinct can be learned, but I do believe some people are born with that. And I think you have to have a combination of both. You have to have people in your lineup that have that killer instinct, and they have to be important players. I don't think they could be, they brought in Joe Thornton and Jason Spezza, and no knock on them. They played fantastic. But when your leaders are your third and fourth line players, that's not good enough. They need to be important players playing big minutes out on the ice, and they need to carry or pick up the level of play of their teammates. and you need your big boys to do that. I think they need to bring in somebody to play with those boys to help them along the way, because I believe in our core players' abilities. There's no question of that.
Absolutely. And I think Spezza and Thornton, though, like the one thing I noticed even in game 7 is they were skating harder than the guys that are freaking 20 years younger than them, because they've been there before. They've done it. Like Spezza, I believe Spezza had 4 or 5 goals, which was either tied with Nylander or second on the team in goals. Like, he has it. He clearly does. He scores big goals at big times. And even last year in the bubble against Columbus, you had a 36-year-old Jason Spezza fighting one of the Columbus guys, which in turn gave us that emotion to come back in the third, down 3 goals with 3 minutes left. So I do agree with you, though. I think we need guys like Thornton and Spezza that are a little bit younger that can play the first and second line minutes. A guy like Zach Hyman, but with more experience. I'm not saying Hyman specifically, but the experience, right, is big.
Yeah, I'd say that and more skill. I'll get into a couple players later on. I know we want to touch on maybe 3 key players that we would like later on. But
sure.
Yeah,
Brett, do you have anything else to add to that, or are you good there?
I'm good on Brendan and Kyle's pressers. I have no other takeaways. Brett, you good with that?
You're muted.
Yeah, no, I'm good with it. I just want to reiterate what Clay said. I mean, a guy like Jason Spezza, we're talking about killer instinct. I don't know if Jason Spezza had killer instinct at 18 years old when he came into the league. I think he learned it. Again, he's 38 years old or whatever. He's been in the league almost 20 years. I think he learned it. And especially when he's touted as a guy that's supposed to be on your top line when he's 18 years old, and now he's playing third or fourth line minutes in a different role, in a different stage in his career. I think that's, in my opinion, that's what killer instinct is, was, and will be.
I agree with you. I agree. I totally agree with you. I think Jason would have learned that from the teams that he's been on. He's been on some quality teams. He was on that Ottawa team that went to a Stanley Cup final versus the Anaheim Ducks and lost, I believe, and it was a game 7. So I can see how it's learned, but I think there's guys that are naturally born with it. And I think that's why what Brendan meant by going externally and having to go externally, because you need to surround the guys that don't have it, that can learn it, with those guys that already have it. And I think it's more, and again, I don't play professional hockey, nor do I pretend to, but I think it's more about confidence. The more I think about it, when you're out on the ice, it's a level of comfort and confidence. And if you have others out on the ice that are out there, killing big minutes, continually playing their game, and it kind of settles the rest of the boys down, I think you can start playing your hockey game again, right? Instead of being tense and holding back because you're nervous and it's sort of an anxious energy, you need to press forward. You need to be able to be relaxed and just play the game and let it happen in those moments. And I think we kind of all agree. Some have it naturally, and I do think it can be learned. I do agree with you, and you heard that from Brendan Shanahan. So clearly he's played the game, and he didn't win a Stanley Cup, he alluded to, until his 10th year in the league. So, that is something you can learn, but I think you learn it from a group of people that some have it, some don't, and you do it together. And like Brendan alluded to, once you do learn it, it's something that you won't forget, right? But it's a hurdle I think they need to overcome as a group, as a team, and then it's learned, then it's retained. Let's hope they have the opportunity again next year.
Yeah, and as painful of a 54 years we've had as fans and players of the team, like, man, they're only Matthews and Martin are 23 and 24 years old. Like, they are still young men. Like, they still have a lot to go. Like, Ovechkin took 10 years to learn the playoff mentality, and look what happened when he did. They were unstoppable that year. And who knows? We'll see. I'm more patient than the average fan, though. Like, I want to win now. Don't get me wrong, but I also realize that they're very young and they have a lot to learn still. You're not a complete player at 23 years old, unless you're Wayne Gretzky, like Crosby, a few of the guys you can name that were complete at 21 years old, but there's a long way to go. And the last thing I'll say about Killer Instinct is recent memory of mine. The one player that I thought had it at a very young age was Maxime Comtois. He was the captain of Team Canada at the World Juniors, and the guy was just throwing hits every opportunity he had. He could score, he could pass, he could kill penalties. He was on the power play. Like guys like that, I think have it at a young age, but it's like you say, how can you doubt Brendan Shanahan? I don't think I'm not going to doubt the guy. 3 cups with the Red Wings is no easy feat to do. Salary cap before the salary cap or not, it was those teams. Like even Yzerman, their captain, that guy was a beast, monster, like absolutely crazy. And then the last guy I remember as a child was Scott Stevens. He had it. Scott Stevens had it. Like he was terrifying to play against. But that leads us to the free agency. We'll stop beating the dead horse a bit there with the pressers, but it's definitely something to think of. But the free agents coming up, there are, I believe, an average of 8 UFAs per team. It's one of the highest we've had in years. I think you can thank the salary cap freeze for that. But who are like? Do you guys have any guys in mind that you're looking at in free agency? It's kind of a blur for me. I mean, like I was saying before the show, I'd love Ovechkin. He's a UFA, but that's just not going to happen. That's a fantasy league mentality. But we'll start with you again, Danny. Like, who are some guys you've been thinking of that are upcoming free agents?
Here, I'm going to share my screen in a minute. I wanted to comment. There was one more thing that I wanted to make a comment on about the pressers, and not the management pressers. I wanted to get into the players. There was a few takeaways I had from the players. So the order in which I watched their press conferences, I watched Austin Matthews first, and then I watched Mitch Marner's. No real big takeaway in the Austin Matthews one. I really liked how he, and it's the right thing to say as well, but I truly think he believes it when they mentioned that he's up for the Lady Byng Award, voted on was it the Lady Byng or the Ted Lindsay Award that they announced. It's Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, the Lady Byng he's up for. He's nominated. That's by the players, right? Or is that the Ted Lindsay? I'm getting those mixed up.
No, I think the Lady Byng is by the players.
Okay, so whatever award it was that they mentioned he's nominated with Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid, I thought he said the right thing, but I truly believe that he meant that, it's an honor to be mentioned in the same category as those guys and to be thought of by his peers, but it doesn't even come close to anything, that a team could accomplish together. And that was their mission and that was their goal. And you could see that, you could see the hurt, you could see the pain and the disappointment in his face. Moving forward to Mitch Marner's, I wanted to comment on Mitch Marner's. There was one thing in his presser that kind of ticked me off a little bit. The question, and I'm paraphrasing, was, Mitch, is there anything that you would do differently in your next opportunity in the playoffs? And he flat out came out and said, nope. And that kind of bothered me. I was actually taken back. I was actually listening to that on my phone, and my wife overheard, and she turned and went, "What?" And she was even pissed off by that. And I kind of looked at her and I went, "Wow." That kind of pissed me off, because clearly you would do something different. Clearly you have to do something different, because what you did wasn't good enough. So you have to make adjustments. Even just give the cliche. I think we could all go back and, we have takeaways and we can all get better. Just give me the cliche. To say nope, that implies that you did everything that you possibly could. And Mitch, we know the level of player you are. You didn't play to your capabilities for whatever reason, and part of that is credit to Montreal as well. So that was my takeaway with Mitch. I then watched John Tavares after those two, and right away within the first minute or two of John owned everything. He did what a leader does, and he did what a 30-year-old would do. You could tell the maturity from John Tavares from the other guys. And, it made me kind of take a back seat for a bit and take a look and go, wait a second, these guys are 23 and 24 years old. that makes a big difference, right? John's been in the league for a very long time, since he was 18 years old, 18, 19 years old. He's been around the block. He has so much experience. He knows what to say to the media, and he has a mature approach to it. These guys, the young guys, are they get a little bit defensive at times, and I get it. Like, I couldn't imagine being criticized for doing my job by the media and people tweeting about you on Twitter and all that. That's what you're paid millions of dollars for, though. That's just part of the business. That's part of the job, right? But I get it. I understand it. It's not fun. But you've got to persevere and be better than that. I thought John owned everything. He came out and flat out said we weren't good enough in Game 5 and Game 6. There was no excuse for it, and he said that, and that's exactly what you want to hear, because there was no excuse for it. I love John's presser. I thought he was very honest. Last but not least, Joe Thornton. The biggest takeaway I took away from Joe Thornton's presser was when Joe was asked, again paraphrasing, but what kind of happened? What kind of happened to the team? How can you summarize it? And Joe flat out said, good teams show up on time and they skate on time. They skate hard. So what he said, you could tell, and he did admit, he said it is fresh. It's still fresh, and they need to take a few more days to kind of get over it. But I thought that was pretty pointed. He didn't want to take any digs or any shots, but as a veteran who's been in the league for a very long time, he knew that they weren't skating well, and they didn't come out and they didn't start because they were nervous and tentative. And, I hope in his exit interview with Dubas and the management group and Sheldon Keefe, I hope each player could be honest. And I think it's a learning lesson, right, that they can bring forward to next year's team, whether Joe is on the team or not. So I just wanted to mention my takeaways about those interviews specifically.
All right. So next we are going to talk about the free agents, and man, there's a lot, as you can see on this page here. Starting with my absolute dream of a free agent, if I were to pick, is Obi, but we've already got enough forwards, as we discussed, over 10 million. So that's a goner. But Danny, we'll start with you. Are there any guys that really stick out to you that you think we should take a shot at?
Yeah. Okay. So looking at here, we can see the top 28. We have to keep in mind that the Maple Leafs have, not very much cap space. I think they have like $12.5 million or in and around that range. And they have quite a few players to sign. So it's kind of hard to predict, but I can pick out guys that, I think would be of interest to the Maple Leafs, and kind of explain why I think they would be of interest. It's just, can they make it work cap wise? So, okay, my eyes gravitate immediately to number 15, Dougie Hamilton. He's a Toronto area boy. He's a right-handed shot defenseman. He is a big point producing defenseman in 55 games. I think he has 42 points, 10 goals, 32 assists. The guy has a shot from the power play, quarterbacks the Carolina power play, right? So what's one of our biggest issues? I don't think it's defensively anymore. I think the team competes hard enough in their D zone. So you kind of need a quarterback power play defenseman. And Dougie Hamilton is a top 4 defenseman for sure. I think him and TJ Brody would be a fantastic pair. Any of Dougie Hamilton's sort of defensive liabilities would be covered up by TJ Brody, much like he did for Morgan Riley. And the guy's 6'6". He's a big boy. He's a big body. 220 pounds, I believe, too. So that piques my interest a little bit. I just wonder, what would Dougie Hamilton command? I'm thinking got to be in the 7 to 9 million range. So that's tough, right? Like that's difficult. I think the Leafs, again, 12.5 million. That's a lot of money. They're going to have to move some contracts around. I would entertain bringing back Nick Foligno at the right price. I think I mentioned that in the last podcast too. If he's interested, because I think at this point in Nick's career, he obviously wants to go cup chasing. You would think anyway. And I don't think, obviously the options out there for him to return to Columbus. His family lives in the Columbus area. His kids go to school in Columbus. It's a comfortable place. And I think, the door is wide open for him to go back there. I don't know what kind of salary, Nick Foligno is going to command. Like, he's not a he's not a point producing player anymore. He's a role player at this point in his career, and a very good one at that. I think he's very serviceable. And again, another Toronto area boy, somebody who understands the market. And I thought we saw that in his interviews and all that too. I think he said all the right things and showed very good leadership. So I would definitely look at Nick Foligno if the price is right. I'm thinking around the $2 million mark per year on maybe a 2 or 3 year deal. Sam Reinhart's a free agent from Buffalo. Wow.
Yeah. He was one of the ones TSN was talking about the other night.
He's a UFA?
Yep.
Wow.
No, RFA. He is RFA. It says right there. Yeah.
He's an R. Restricted. Okay, because wow, when I thought automatically UFA, I went see a Zach Hyman.
It's still an option. You can still throw a deal at him.
Wow. Well, no, I obviously the Leafs can't do an offer sheet. They don't have the draft capital. Sorry. To do so. Yeah,
we're screwed.
Yeah, we have 3 picks in 7 rounds, and I think they're towards the back end of the draft. But Sam Reinhart, wow. If you can't come to an agreement with Zach Hyman, Sam Reinhart's a hell of a player, and he adds a level of physicality and skill. I really like that player. I just think he's in a horrible situation in Buffalo. I actually thought he was one of Buffalo's better players. Even when there
25 goals on Buffalo is
yeah,
might as well be 40 on another team.
And by no means when I say this, I'm not saying he's a better player than Jack Eichel, because that's crazy. I'm not saying that at all. Jack Eichel is a far superior player and an elite player, but I'm just going to call a spade. When Jack was in the lineup, and again, I don't know how healthy he was, because obviously he didn't play the rest of the season with that neck injury. But Sam Reinhart was one of their best players, if not their best player. He was a really good player for them, and he produced. He was one of the few that actually produced. So that we'll see what happens with Zach Hyman. Maybe that's a guy you can bring in for around $4.5 million, $5 million. Because I see him sort of as a Tyler Toffoli type player. And I think they would have similar stats too. And I think Montreal paid Tyler Toffoli around 4.25 on a 4-year deal last year. So I imagine that's what Sam Reinhart's camp is probably going to look at and target. Is there maybe a trade there to be had where you can free up some salary and you fill one hole? Like say if you wanted to sign Dougie Hamilton and you knew you were going to lose Zach Hyman, maybe is it a possibility that you can move Morgan Riley for RFA Sam Reinhart, and you sign Sam Reinhart to the money that you would hope to sign Zach Hyman for, assuming Sam Reinhart wants around 4.5 million or 4.25. So that's a possibility. Kind of scrolling down. I don't know if this is just former Leaf kind of guy that I know, and but I would entertain at the right price. See Tyler Bozak's name there. He's 30.
Centerman. Yeah, he's top centerman. Like he wins most of his face-offs.
Yeah, and he's 30. I understand he's 35 years old. He'll be 36 years old. I wouldn't mind Bozy, depending on the money that he'd want. And you can see his numbers have dropped off considerably, but a very reliable 2-way center. I could see him on the 3rd line, and then Spets on the 4th, assuming they're bringing Spets back. I could see Tyler Bozak doing that. I think he's a very serviceable player. I really like Tyler Bozak. I just, haven't watched him the last few years in St. Louis, so I don't know how much he's dropped off, but can he still play that role? A good 2-way center that wins faceoffs? That's serviceable. Moving down the list for me.
That's where it kind of starts to drop. I mean, Bret, do you see any guys so far that you would take a shot at? Because Dougie Hamilton is a great player, Danny.
It's tough. I'm looking at goalies because I'm a sucker. Because I don't think Freddie Anderson's coming back, and I'm starting to doubt if Jack Campbell can play 60 games.
What about Antti Ranta there? I see Antti Ranta or Devin Dubnyk.
The names that popped out to me, and they're pipe dream names. I think it would be nice to see maybe Reimer come back. Grubauer,
but he,
Grubauer is a great goaltender, right?
That would be the nicest guy goal tandem ever if you had Jack Campbell backed up by James Reimer. But
I totally agree.
Like those are saints on the back end. You might
you mentioned Grubauer, Bret. I don't think there's a chance if Colorado doesn't bring him back. They're crazy. But
well, I'm also looking at.
I agree.
I'm also looking at Chris Drieger.
That's the guy. That's the guy that I would target if I was the Leafs because I don't think he's going to command a lot. Is he not an RFA though? Where's Drieger's name?
I am looking again.
I believe he's an RFA.
No, he's a UFA.
Wow.
Where's the name? Did we?
I don't. Crazy UFA. I mean, he's pretty
yeah.
good.
I know he's a UFA.
Oh, hey, and there's a name that I just saw too. I know I'm getting off topic with the goaltending. I'm with you with that goaltender. I just saw Nick Bonino's name. Nick Bonino is a hell of a third line center too option. That's a guy that knows how to get it done. He's won cups in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's a valid point. One guy that really sticks out if you're talking about, and I know this is down the list, there's two actually that stick out as defensemen would be Montour and Alec Martinez. Those are two very reliable defensemen. Montour is a beast. The guy throws his weight around arguably as good as anyone on D.
He didn't have very much fun in Buffalo, though.
No, he didn't.
I don't think anybody's having fun in
Buffalo. And I don't mean that he didn't have fun. I don't think, like you were both saying, nobody has fun in Buffalo. I don't think his numbers dictated how good of a hockey player he is.
Yeah, I don't think anybody truly knows how good of a hockey player he is because of where he played in Buffalo, right? So yeah. he had such opportunity or promise when he was in Anaheim and they made that deal. And I was so jealous at the time when they traded for Brandon Montour. I thought that was a guy that the Leafs should go out and target at that time. And then he did really nothing in Buffalo. And, we had an opportunity there in Florida when he was dealt. I think he's more of a depth defenseman at this point. He'd have to earn a top four role.
No, and Danny, I agree with you. My concern is because he didn't have a great time in Buffalo is what can he bring to Toronto? Does he still have it mentally? Does he still have it emotionally? Sure, you know what? If you're a good hockey player, you're a good hockey player. But if you're put in a spot where you get shit kicked for year after year, that's got to weigh on you. You're either going to come back strong or you're never going to be the same again. And that's the point. Like, is he ready to redeem himself? Does he have it in him to redeem himself?
The way I see it on the Leafs defense, since we're looking at free agents, the way I see it on the Leafs D-core, obviously we know TJ Brody will be there. And we know Jake Muzzin will be there. I think there's some question. I think we could all agree. And I think everybody, and there's going to be huge speculation in the media about Morgan Riley and them moving Morgan Riley. He's got 1 year left on his deal. They can't let him walk to free agency. You can't just lose a player like that. They're not going to be able to afford to pay Morgan Riley unless they move other guys out. But I would rather pay a player like Dougie Hamilton or a Seth Jones if you can get a hold of him. But I like Dougie Hamilton. I like what he brings because he's a bit of the opposite of TJ Brody and Jake Muzzin. He's that power play offensive defenseman. You need to improve the power play. That's one of the reasons why we lost that postseason series. We could not produce on the power play. If the Leafs could produce on their power play and it was clicking, Montreal would be buried. Like they wouldn't have a chance in the series. So that is a big area of need that this team needs to address as well. Another player that just caught my eye, this guy's a beast, and I don't know if he's gonna. I could see New York re-signing him. Casey Cizikas, he's an Oakville boy. I've met him before. He's a hell of a player, man. He was out there in the final minutes last night, playing crunch time minutes, trying to kill off that fury by the Boston Bruins at the end of the game.
At Casey Cizikas' grandma, the year that the Steelheads hosted the Mem Cup, I sat beside her at a Mem Cup final, and we just she just kept talking about her grandson, and I was like, "So who's your grandson? Who's your grandson?" And she talked about Casey for like an hour and a half, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's absolutely right. Like, he was a good hockey player back in junior. He's obviously developed his game to be a pro. That would be a great pickup.
He's a hell of a player. I just can't see Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders letting him go. To be honest with you, now mind you, they have some other free agents. Like I think isn't Kyle Palmieri a free agent? They've got some guys that
they traded for Palmieri as a rental because he was in the last year of his deal. His time in New Jersey was up, or wherever the hell, I think it was New Jersey.
Yeah, so like they've got to think long and hard about that too. Like I don't know what Casey Cizikas is going to command. Like what is his salary currently? Is it like 2 something?
He won't get much more than that at 30.
No, because he's not a point guy. He's probably around the 1.5 to $2 million range, and what he does. But man, oh man, that's a guy that has killer instinct. That guy knows how to get it done.
Presence guy for sure.
He'd
be a huge locker room guy.
Him and Cal Clutterbuck, another guy, not necessarily that I'd love to see or anything like that, but I think a guy that Kyle Dubas will take a long, hard look at is Mikael Granlund, because I think there was rumblings in the past of Mikael Granlund and Dubas trying to go out and acquire him. So I think that's another guy that the Leafs may look at. Looking at this free agent list, there's a lot of good free agents.
And if you go back to goalies, you know what? The number one touted I see on this whole list so far, Peter Mrazek. Peter Mrazek is a beast of a goalie. Then he's actually arguably one of the best in the league. Like he was hurt this year though for most of the year, but you see there 8 games played or 12 games played, 3 shutouts. Like that was a tough division too. You got Tampa and Florida in that division.
It's not that I don't think Peter Mrazek is a good goaltender. I think he's a pretty good goaltender. I don't know how good he is. I also know that Carolina is one of the better defensive teams in the league, right? And they have like I haven't been watching that series that closely, but isn't Nedeljkovic in for them, or have they been kind of rotating in and out
until they lost game 1 and 2 against Tampa? Mrazek came in game 3, got the win. Game 4, he got absolutely let down by his entire team. They just hung him out to dry in that game. Tampa scored, I think, 5 goals on him on like 25 shots.
Tampa had more power play goals in the second period than the Leafs had in their 7-game series.
Yeah,
Tampa was down 4-2, and they came back and won 6-4. They're a fucking beast of a hockey team.
Oh god, it's sickening. Another name that sticks out, and I know it's our heated rivals, but Philip Deneau, he proved he could be a shutdown center. He contained Marner and Matthews better than most people I've ever seen personally. I mean, I thought he was great.
And he's a free agent. Interesting. What does he make currently? I just can't see because the chat group
3.125 or 3.083, 3,083,333.
Yeah, I can't see him getting much more than that. But just keep in mind, boys, like we really don't have a lot of room, and unless Dubas gets really creative. Like I was watching Andrew Pillock his hockey video today, and he was talking about moving out some salary to create a little bit more flexibility in free agency. Riley Nash is another name there too that I would consider at the right price. There's so many good depth options, but yeah, he was mentioning moving out in Alex Kerfoot, and that's kind of what I foresee happening. I think Alex Kerfoot's salary, his $3.5 million salary, thereabouts. He's either going to be selected by Seattle, or I see them moving him at the draft for a pick so they can move up into either the 2nd or 3rd round, because I think they'd get a 2nd or a 3rd round pick for Alex Kerfoot, and maybe a package Travis Dermott with him to a team that isn't that deep, and or maybe even just after the expansion draft if he doesn't get selected. But I think it's Kerfoot or Hall that's gone in the expansion draft, in my opinion. So keeping that in mind, like you've got to clear out some salaries here, right? I don't think, and Pillock mentioned, he was adamant about trading Mitch Marner's salary and his almost $11 million salary. I don't see that happening at all. And I think that would be a very foolish move. There's very few players that you could trade Mitch Marner for that would make any sense. And I think the only names that I could think of off the top of my head, one, it's been mentioned out there before, Jack Eichel. I'm going to throw another one out there that no one has mentioned. And the reason why I brought it up in a conversation, I thought it was kind of unique and very interesting. And this is the first time I'm mentioning it to you guys as well. But I'll throw this one out there for you, okay? And this all started because I saw a meme. There's so many memes out there after we got eliminated again. This is the first time I could actually laugh at them as a Leaf fan. I used to defend them all the time, but now I just laugh at them. There was one meme where it was like Tobey Maguire from Spider-Man, and he didn't have his glasses on, and he's squinting. And then directly across from it was a picture of Matthews and Marner. And then he put his glasses on in the photo directly below, and across from that photo was a picture of DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. And I thought it was very interesting. So it made me think, like, wait a second. What the Raptors had to do, now mind you, the Raptors won playoff series. They just couldn't get over the hurdle of LeBron James in the Eastern Conference until he left. But in order to get over the hurdle, Masai Ujiri traded one of his core players, that in DeMar DeRozan, and he brought in a killer, one with killer instinct. I thought that was very interesting. And the parallels, I know it's a different sport, but kind of crosses over. So it got me thinking. I was having this conversation with a buddy, and he goes, let's go over what Kawhi meant to the Raptors. So he started, mentioning, well, Kawhi Leonard was this, he had been there, he had done that. He knows how to win. He gets it done in big game situations. He goes, who would be that player in hockey? The only name that I could think of, and I'm not saying this trade would happen. It's a very interesting one though. Salaries work out almost exactly. Patrick Kane in Chicago, veteran player. He's like 33 years old, and I know Mitch Marner's 23 years old. I think there's either 8 or 10 years difference in there, and I know there's quite a big difference. But if you want to win now, and your goal is to win now, you have Austin Matthews for 3 more years guaranteed, and then you just pray to God that your team's still competitive enough and you can convince him to re-sign here and he could be a lifelong Leaf. But you have 3 years with Austin Matthews and 4 more years of John Tavares. Your window is now. An interesting one that nobody has mentioned, Patrick Kane for Mitch Marner, and their salaries match up almost identical. It's like $400,000 apart in salary.
I like it. And the reason I like it is because I don't know if Jonathan Taves is coming back. He was injured last year, right? And who knows what was wrong with him. We could all speculate. But no, I like it. They bring a guy like that in. With DeBrincat, I could see it happening for them. I would take Patrick Kane in a heartbeat.
You just think what he means, eh? Like, the guy gets it done. He understands how to play playoff hockey. He's been there. He's won 3 Stanley Cups, and he's not falling off at all. If you take a look at the top 10 players in league scoring, he's there every single year. Every single year. I think he was just behind Matthews and Marner this year. I think it went like McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Marner, Matthews, and then I believe Patty Kane was right behind them. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, and he's proved he can do it without Taves. I think one of the big question marks was that 1-2 was a hell of a 1-2 punch. Like you had Saad with them as well. You had Panarin with them. And they won with both players. And it's like, he definitely answered the bell. He was the leader on that team this year. Chicago had no right being in a playoff race, and he was just keeping them in there. And he can pass, he can score as well. He can do it all.
He can. He's such a leader, and he's such a force out there. He's a power play guy. He can do everything. But yes, he'll be up for the Hart. You watch when the Hart nominees come out. He'll be up for the Hart because I'd say at the midway point, I thought Patty Kane he would be the Hart Trophy winner if it wasn't for ridiculous Connor McDavid. The guy's just ridiculous. 100, what do you have, 120 points?
It's 108 or 10.
Sorry, he was on pace. Sorry, he was on pace for something ridiculous. He had over 100.
That's 2 points a game almost in a 56 season.
That's ridiculous. That is absolutely insane. And Draisaitl was the next closest. They play on the same team, and he was over like 20 points or something like that difference.
Yeah, and they call him McJesus for a reason in Edmonton. So
absolutely. So if it wasn't for him, I'd say Patty Kane would win the Hart Trophy. But you watch, he'll be nominated for the Hart Trophy. He is fantastic. But you hear that here first. That rumor.
You heard it here first, definitely. And the one thing I'll add, I know it's a bit of a pipe dream thing, but if we got the first overall pick a year before Matthews, we would have had McDavid. Like, ultimately, like I was having this discussion with my buddy. He's a Flames fan, but he's a hockey fan in general, and we were saying how McDavid's in a league of his own, but then you've got like a 5 or 6 way tie for second most dynamic in the league right now, and that would be, I think we said Draisaitl, McKinnon, Matthews, Kane, and he added a 5th player. I can't remember. I think it might have been Ovechkin and Crosby that we said as well. But it's Ovechkin and Crosby are also kind of on their own level. Like it's hard to do a 1 through 5 other than McDavid. Like you have McDavid's number 1 always to me. Like he's generational, but we've got some huge guys in hockey now. It's a fun sport to watch.
There's so many good guys. Like we're missing Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak. Like, and those two, and not to discount Patrice Bergeron, fantastic player, first ballot Hall of Famer, but those two players, the Pasta and Marchand specifically, those two are superstars. Like I hate Brad Marchand with a passion, but boy, oh boy, the more you watch this guy play, especially in the playoffs, that guy just knows how to get it done, man. Like I'm envious. I watch him. I go, wow, he is just a fucking hell of a hockey player. He knows how to get it done, and his size does not matter. He doesn't make it a factor. It's only a factor for those that view it that way. He doesn't give a shit. He goes to the dirty areas and he plain old gets the job done with high-end skill and talent.
Yeah, that goal he scored last night was just like
disgusting.
And don't get me wrong, I enjoy watching Marchand play when he's not being an idiot. Like when he's not being an idiot, he's one of the most dynamic players in the league. Like he doesn't have to spear people and punch them in the back of the head. Just beat them with your stick, putting the puck in the net, dude.
I think in my opinion, I think that's what gets him going. I think because you notice when he's not playing that way, he's not at his best. I think that's just his personality, and he's a bit of a shithead like that. But you know what? I would take that guy on my team any day of the week. What a player. The guy knows how to get it done both regular season and playoffs. You could tell. Now to Brett's point earlier in the podcast, that is something he learned, because Boston did have failure early on in their tenure when him and Bergeron were young. They lost. Nobody talks about it. Everyone forgets about it, especially Boston fans. They'll never mention it. But they were one of the only, I think, 7 teams or 6 teams in NHL history to ever be up 3-0 in a series and lose. They were up 3-0, I think, in 2009 or 2010 on the Philadelphia Flyers, 3-0. And I was either the first or second series. They were dominating Philly. Philly came back, sent it to a game 7. Boston went up 3-0 in game 7. They lost game 7 4-3 and the series 4-3. So they've had their hardships too. They had to learn along the way as well. So that's another parallel. And one more parallel I just wanted to mention, since we're on that topic, since I touched on that. There was an interesting article written by Larry Brooks in the New York Post. And I know he's a New York Rangers sort of beat writer and a New York City reporter, but he was writing about the Maple Leafs, and he touched on the parallel between the Maple Leafs and the early 1990s Detroit Red Wings. And it got me thinking. I thought that was very interesting. I had to look into it to find out, what happened to Detroit. So Detroit, with a young Steve Yzerman and a really good team, they kept dominating in the regular season. They kept first place in their division in the regular season. Playoffs would come around. They would lose in the first round, lose in the second round, lose in the first round. They're kind of sputtering. And there was actually talk in Detroit and criticism about trading Steve Yzerman. Nobody talks about that now, but at the time, they thought Steve Yzerman was a bust and he couldn't get the job done. So I kind of like the parallels. And then, so I thought, well, what did they do differently? Well, guess the player that they went out and got. And this is kind of interesting. They went out and acquired Brendan Shanahan in 1990. Yeah, from 1995 or 1996, and they won 1997-98 Stanley Cup, or 98-99. I think it was 97-98. I think
97-98 because 99 was Dallas.
There you go. And then I think Jersey probably won in 2000. So
yeah,
or,
there you
or
go.
Colorado.
There you go. I mean, that how ironic is that Shanahan was the guy they brought in. So who are we to doubt Brendan Shanahan saying you can learn it? Because clearly Yzerman learned it. He was a bust in the play. And even I know recent history, and I know they had success after 2004, but Tampa Bay, don't forget, they got swept by Columbus 2 years ago, and look what they did the year after. They won the cup. You can overcome adversity, and I think it's only a matter of time to me. And I'm not just saying that as a Leaf fan. If you look at the Capitals, the Lightning, the teams that failed before winning, it's a close example of what the Leafs are doing right now. So we'll see. But in terms of, so we touched on it a bit in the free agents, but in terms of the expansion draft, who do you guys think is going to go? Me personally, I think Kerfoot, unless again we trade him for a pick, or Dermott. That's got to be the only two, because Sandin can't even be unprotected. He's a RFA. Bogosian is a UFA. We have so many UFAs that it really depends who we sign, but it's got to be Dermott or Kerfoot. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, I think I touched on it the first episode that we had. I'm 100% certain that it's Dermott. I don't want it to be Dermott. I like I said, I really liked him, but he's failed me. He's let me down. He's broke my heart. He's not the player that I thought he was. Leave him unprotected. He's gonna go.
I think it's between one of three players. I think it's either Kerfoot, Hall, or, like you guys mentioned, Travis Dermott. It just all depends, when Seattle gets around to, selecting from Toronto, what team have they already assembled? What players have they picked from other teams first, right? That's how it's all going to shake out. I think Justin Hall would be very enticing. He's only at $2 million. He's arguably a top four defenseman. He certainly is for us. So why can't he be for anyone else? He logs big minutes and he plays against the opposition's best. Look what he did against Connor McDavid this season. Him and Muzz shut down McDavid and Draisaitl. It was insane during the regular season, mind you. But so that's why I think either Justin Hall or Kerfoot. But I think the Leafs are trading Kerfoot if he doesn't get selected.
I think it would be foolish to not protect Justin Hall, because you only have to leave two unprotected on B. So if they don't protect Justin Hall, they're taking a risk.
Okay, so let's go through it then. Who would you protect? Because it's you could go, isn't it 6 and 2, or how does it work with the numbers and pick? You could protect 8 players.
You have to leave. It's something like 4 unprotected on offense and 2 unprotected on defense.
Well, no, you could only protect so many players. I think it's 8 players total. There's some sort of combination. I don't know if we could bring up. There is that link that we were kind of going over earlier that you sent.
No, I'll bring it up because it's something like that. It's not. It's not as many as I thought it was. To be honest, I was kind of surprised by the rules. I thought it was a little less. I thought it's less stringent than I thought it was, but I'll just pull up the link and we'll look because
here, if we just count them off the bat while you're pulling that up, obviously Austin Matthews, obviously Mitch Marner, obviously John Tavares, that's 3, obviously William Nylander, that's 4. Clearly you're going to protect Morgan Riley unless you deal him beforehand, right? So you're going to protect Morgan Riley, you're going to protect TJ Brody, you're going to protect Jake Muzzin. If you're only allowed 8, so here we'll go kind of through these rules. But if you're only allowed 8 with a goalie, or is it
one play? So I'll read the what the NHL rules are. So when making players unavailable in the draft, teams can protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or 8 skaters and a goalie with these provisions. So players with no movement clauses who decline to waive those clauses must be protected. So obviously Tavares anyway. We wouldn't unprotect him anyway. First and second year NHL players and all unsigned draft choices are exempt from selection. So Dermott, we don't even have to touch, which is good. Or not Dermott, sorry, Sandin. One available player must be a defenseman who is under contract in 21-22 and played at least 40 games in this past season or 70 games combined in the two before that. Two available players must be forwards who are under contract, and the same provisions, 40 games last year and 70 games combined the 2 years before that. One player must be a goalie who's under contract or who is a restricted free agent, and then players who miss the final 60 games or who have otherwise been confirmed to have career-threatening injury cannot be exposed. But luckily, we don't have any of those.
Okay, so the Leafs are probably going to go with the. Sorry again. I can't see the top part of this where it was defined the amount of players or whatnot.
7 forwards, 3 defensemen.
Forwards, 3 defensemen with a goalie, or 8 skaters and a goalie, right?
It can be, or 8 skaters and a goalie if you don't want to go 7-3. But I think safe to say it'll be Tavares, Marner, Nylander, Matthews without a doubt.
Yep, that's 4. And then you're going to go Riley, you're going to go Muzzin, you're going to go Brody. That's 7. Okay, so if you wanted to go the route where you could protect 8 plus 1, then you could protect Hall, and then obviously Jack Campbell as your goaltender, and then that's it. That's that route. But if you go the other route, then you're adding in Kerfoot. I don't think they're going to do that. So they're probably going to go with the 8 plus 1, in my opinion.
Yeah, they pretty much have to. I mean, again, letting Hall go at that money would be absolutely foolish, in my opinion. I mean, the guy's proven he can do it. Like, he's one of my favorite defensemen on the team, to be honest. He's just a shutdown guy, which is what we needed, to be honest. Like, now you have Muzzin, Brody, and Hall. You don't protect those 3, you're nuts, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And I think you round it out by you trade Morgan Riley, you bring in more of like that Dougie Hamilton power play defenseman to pair with TJ Brody. And then you have Rasmus Sandin, and then you try and sign Zach Bogosian or a player like Zach Bogosian. And that fills out your decor. It's much of the same, but you've added the extra addition and support there on the power play with a big-bodied offensive player if you sign Dougie Hamilton. So I kind of like the way that shapes out. I agree with you there. Some people are talking about Timothy Liljegren being a part of this team. I don't see him being any more than a depth player, maybe the 7th D on the team. I don't see him being in the starting night roster. If he is, something big time is wrong. Like, I don't think you can just automatically gift Rasmus Sandin a top 4 spot. I think that's putting a lot of pressure on a very young kid who has, somewhat limited experience and at the NHL level. If you're trying to develop this player, that doesn't mean that you can't give him power play time, like secondary power play time, assuming they address that primary need and deal Riley. But I think sheltering him a little bit, pairing him with a defenseman that's defensively minded and can clear the front of the net and help him out there physically, like a Zach Bogosian, and bring him back with a little familiarity. I think that would be in the Leafs' best interest.
Definitely, and we will see what happens. I mean, I think it's like July 23rd. I'll be watching the expansion draft. I think expansion drafts are exciting because you see what the GM can do. Like, Vegas proved that it's not a dying art to be able to do it. I mean, look at that Stanley Cup final in the first year. Like, that's just unheard of, and I realize that. But St. Louis did it in '68. They lost to the Bruins, but they still did it. And so we'll see. It's going to be cool having 32 teams. I feel like the NFL now with 32 teams.
Yeah, no kidding. But to the point about Vegas, me personally, I think that's a bit of an anomaly. I don't like how their draft pick isn't Vegas. They're exempt from the expansion draft too.
Yeah.
Right. But they've created a new rule in this expansion draft. So like Vegas did, they took advantage, and big time credit to their general manager, McPhee. He picked the pocket of a lot of GMs in that last expansion draft. It was very unique, and a lot of other GMs, I think, panicked because how many draft picks was he given to take or select a certain player? Like Columbus, I forget what draft pick they gave. It may have been a first or second round draft pick to not select somebody else and then take William Karlsson. And then William Karlsson is one of their top 2 centers. So not only did they get a top pick, but they also get William Karlsson, and it goes on and on. Somebody paid them to take Riley Smith, and Riley Smith is one of their top 6 forwards. They gave them a draft pick and Riley Smith, so they didn't take somebody else. The list goes on and on. They had draft picks for days. That's how they could trade Nick Suzuki, because they had like 4 first-round draft picks in that expansion, maybe even 5. They traded Nick Suzuki to Montreal for Max Pacioretty just because they could at that time, because they have so many prospects. And then they traded Brandstrom, one of their other top prospects, the defenseman, to Ottawa for Mark Stone. And that's how they could load up, right? Seattle's not allowed to do that. They strictly have to pick a player from each roster. No team is allowed to give out a draft pick and here, have this other player or anything like that. So there's no expediting. It's going to be interesting. I don't think they're going to be necessarily horrible, but I don't think they're going to be Las Vegas. I think Vegas got extremely fortunate, and big time credit to McPhee there. He did an exceptional job.
It's funny too, because George McPhee was one of the key players in building the Washington Capitals. And then he makes it to the Cup final and loses basically to the team he built. Like, that was just the weirdest thing. Like, it's such a strange time. Like, it's just weird.
The only shitty trade that McPhee made, there's still one that sticks out in my mind when he was the GM of Washington. It was he traded Philip Forsberg. He was a prospect, believe it or not. Washington drafted Philip Forsberg. Philip Forsberg for Martin Erat. That was on a playoff run. How did that work out for you? Not too well at all. You could have had Philip Forsberg paired with Alexander Ovechkin and Nicholas Backstrom, along with Evgeny Kuznetsov. And anyway, he probably still would have had a job and they would have won a cup together. But, you know, every team can go down the list, and every team has bad trades, right? We know that, especially in Leaf history. Unfortunately.
No kidding. And you never know if it's going to be a bad trade either. Like, Iraq could have been one of their top producers and won them a cup. Who knows? But it's, you know, it's all rhetoric and presumption at this point. But I think that's going to pretty much be it for this episode. I mean, we were going to talk about the series, but we'll do that on the next one. We'll maybe we'll be in the conference final by then. But yeah, it was a pleasure, guys, and I'm glad we could do this today, and hopefully we can get one going in the next few weeks. And once again, if you enjoyed this, please share it with your friends and give us a follow. We would really appreciate it. We're just diehard hockey fans sharing our passion with other diehards. So that will do it. All right, Danny and Bret, thank you so much again, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, boys.
Thank you.